My question is if you will consider the recommendations of the Clan Project report for the Commission to hold hearings in public, to provide a transcript to witnesses who have given oral evidence in private, and if you will consider their request for the archive not to be sealed when it finishes its inquiry.
Yes, sir.
By the Clan Project to the Commission of Investigation. I'm not in a position to comment in detail on the report as it was submitted in the context of the Commission's ongoing work, but I thank the Clan Project for its work. It's important to recognize that a statutory commission is fully independent in the conduct of its investigations. The precise timing and approach to the gathering and examination of evidence are matters for the Commission to decide and progress. The decision to hear evidence in public is a matter for the Commission. It is open to an individual to make a case to the Commission to do so. The confidential committee module of the Commission of Investigation was established to provide a forum for persons who were formerly resident in the homes or who worked in these institutions to provide personal accounts of their experiences in confidence and in private, as informally as is possible in the circumstances. And I want to acknowledge the courage it took in providing testimony on personal experiences to inform the Commission's work. The crucial value of first-hand witness testimony to the statutory investigation is reflected in the arrangements establishing the Commission, and it's open to those who have given testimony at the confidential committee to contact the Commission to make arrangements to view their transcripts of the evidence that they gave to committee if they so wish. The Commission will produce a report of on the confidential committee's investigations. But the Commission of Investigations Act 2004 provides direction for what happens to the records once the Commission submits its reports. And what happens to the records will depend on the nature of the records. And I intend to discuss these matters with the Chair of the Commission in due course. Before the dissolution of the Commission, the chairperson is obliged to deposit all evidence received and all documents created by or for the Commission with the prescribed minister. It is then up to the prescribed minister to decide what happens to these records. As the prescribed minister, I will be obliged to balance all relevant parties' rights and requests, as well as observing due process, natural justice, and respect the Constitution when making a decision on these records. But as a matter of principle, I am supportive of transparency and the widest possible access to these records.
Deputy O'Sullivan, could we have a little silence, please, in the House?
Because actually I couldn't hear all that you were saying, so I'll read the transcript. But I do think I did get some hope from it that some of the recommendations from the Plan Project that you will be considering them. I was at the launch of their report and I heard some of the people who had made the statements, and it was very harrowing to listen to the abuse that they had suffered. The apologies are important, the financial payments are important, but also the truth is important, and that some of the witnesses can give their witness in public, and I think that was so important for them. For those who want to do that, they may not all want to do that. And then, as you said, when the work is done, I think it would be so important that those archives will become available, because we still have to discuss the memorialisation and something that will be appropriate, because I do think that if there is continued silence, that is also a continued abuse.
Truth is important. Absolutely, the truth is important. As I indicated in response to an earlier question, I spent the last week with many of these people and all of the authors of the Clan Project, so I'm very familiar with what their recommendations are. You know, and I also, part of my answer though is I'm just indicating that we do have a Commission of Investigation that is independent operating. But I do understand, you know, how the desire to have some of that testimony in public. I understand that, and we're looking at that. And I do understand as well, you know, the issue around access to the records. And we're looking at that too, both in the context currently, but also in terms of future processes. What I will say, but all of the issues that you raised, Deputy, I have heard, I understand, and we are working on that now.
Thank you, Deputy O'Sullivan.
Yes, and I do acknowledge what happened at the two-day conference in Boston University, and I read what you said there also, and I know that members of the Clan Project were there, so I'm sure that you've been listening. And I mean, one of the themes of that conference was transitional justice and how important that will be. And in their own report, they had quite a comprehensive account of those countries where there is access to records, you know, and there's such a list of them: the UK, Germany, Spain, Austria, Netherlands, Sweden, Belgium. So why should Irish people be treated any different? differently. So I do take hope from what you said today that there can be some witness statements in public, and that you will consider when the report is finished on the archives. Thank you.
To conclude, please.
Thank you, Deputy. Just towards the end of the conference, there's a lot of discussion about whether or not, the transitional justice, that language is the best for us here in Ireland, and I have been using it myself. But in terms of as the conference concluded, having spent 2 days with all the different stakeholders and researchers and experts who have such empathy as well, is whether or not it's more appropriate to talk about transformation as distinct from transition, and that if we are able to find additional processes of the truth in public, of the access to records, of the making available of the testimony, then perhaps we are in a better position, and to take a look at that across the board in the context of various institutions of oppression that our children and young people have been subjected to in the past, then maybe we are in a better position for systemic, structural transformation of Irish society for the future.
Thank you very much, Minister.